For 19 years, this picture was all I had left. It's the last photo my brother Daniel ever took. He sent it to me from the road in 2004 with the text, "Crushing it." An hour later, his phone went dead. We searched that road, those woods, hundreds of times. Then, 2 months ago, the Cedar Creek fire burned 60,000 acres. When the smoke cleared, the sheriff called us. They found something the trees had hidden for almost 2 decades. If you have a brother or sister, someone you can't imagine your life without, maybe you'll understand what I'm about to tell you. And if you're listening to this right now, do me a favor. Pause this and send them a text. Tell them you love them. You just never know when it'll be your last chance. My name is Ryan Holt. I'm 46 years old. I'm a high school history teacher. I have a wife, 2 kids, and a mortgage. On paper, I'm the most normal, boring guy you could ever meet. But for the last 19 years, I've also been the brother of a missing person. And that's not a job. It's a disease. It's a sickness in your bones that never ever lets you rest. Dan. He was my little brother, 3 years younger but 10 times the personality. I was the quiet one, the bookworm. Dan was the one who lit up the room. He was a cycling nut. Not just a hobby, it was his religion. He'd spend thousands of dollars on bikes that weighed less than a textbook, and he'd wear those tight, colorful jerseys. He always joked he was built for spandex. He was 25 in 2004. I was 28. That last day, it was a Saturday, August 14th. Clear sky, hot, perfect riding weather. He was training for some cross-state race. He'd been planning a 100-mile loop through the edge of the Kootenai National Forest. I was mowing the lawn when he wheeled his bike out of the garage. "Wish me luck, big bro," he said, clipping his helmet on. "Don't be an idiot," I told him. "Drink water. Call Mom when you're halfway." Yeah, he grinned. "Try not to die of boredom." He was gone. At 11:05 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was the picture. Him, in his bright yellow jersey, helmet on, squinting into the sun. The long, empty asphalt of Highway 56 stretched out behind him, and the text, "Crushing it." I remember I smiled. I texted back, "Don't get eaten by a bear." He never read it. By 7 p.m., the panic started. He wasn't home. My mom, Lisa, was calling his phone, straight to voicemail. My dad, Mark, was already in his truck driving the route. By 9 p.m., we called the police. The next 72 hours were a blur. Sheriff's deputies, search and rescue, volunteers. They found his bike the next morning, and that was the thing that broke all of us. It was leaning against a mile marker. Mile 22. Not crashed, not thrown, just leaning, like he'd stepped off to take a leak or look at the view. His water bottle was still in its cage. His little handlebar-mounted computer was still there. But Daniel was gone. The search was massive. For 2 weeks, they had helicopters, thermal imaging, dogs. My dad and I walked shoulder to shoulder with strangers, yelling his name until our throats were raw. "Daniel! Daniel!" The only sound that came back was the wind in the pines. The woods out there are dense. They're not like a park. They're old growth. You can step 10 feet off the road and be completely swallowed. The search dogs, they kept pulling east into the thickest part of the brush, but the handlers kept saying they were just hitting deer trails, maybe a bear. The terrain was too rough, full of ravines and deadfall. After a week, they called off the ground search. And then, nothing. The case went cold. Detective David Finch, the original case officer, retired 5 years later. He told me it was the one that haunted him. "People don't just evaporate, Ryan," he said, shaking his head. handing me the last box of Dan's case files. But your brother, he came close. 19 years. Do you know what 19 years of not knowing does to a family? It's not like grief. Grief it's a hole. It's terrible, but it's finite. You can eventually build a life around the hole. This is a fog. It gets into everything. My mom, Lisa, never changed his room. It's still 2004 in there. His cycling trophies are still on the shelf. She went to psychics. She'd call me crying at 3 a.m. I had a dream. He's in water. Or, I saw a face, a man in a truck. We chased down every single flimsy lead. We spent money we didn't have on private investigators. My dad, Mark, he just shrunk. He was a big, loud man, a union carpenter. He just went quiet. He'd sit in his armchair for hours, just staring at the wall. Our family didn't break. It just dissolved. And me? I became obsessed with the road. I drove that stretch of Highway 56 at least once a month for 19 years. I'd pull over at mile 22, right where they found his bike. I'd walk into the woods. I'd stand there, looking into that ocean of green and brown, and I'd just whisper, "Dan, where are you? Just give me a sign. Anything." I'd kick at the dirt. I'd stare at the trees, half expecting to see him step out, grinning, "Gotcha." The woods never said a word. Then 2 months ago, the Cedar Creek fire started. A lightning strike. It was all over the news. It burned for 6 weeks. We lived under a haze of smoke. It was an abstract tragedy. 60,000 acres. You can't even picture that. It burned all the way to the edge of Highway 56. It torched the exact area where Daniel went missing. I watched it, numb. It felt like the world was burning away the last piece of him. The fire was finally contained in early September. The rains came, the smoke cleared, and then, a week ago, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Ryan Holt? Brother of Daniel Holt?" My stomach went cold. You wait for this call for so long, you play it out in your head 1,000,000 times. But when it comes, you can't breathe. This is Detective Amanda Graves with the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. We're working with the Forest Service on a post-burn assessment near Highway 56. A fire crew found something, a structure. It wasn't on any of our maps. Mr. Holt, I think you and your parents need to come to the station. 19 years of fog. And in one phone call, it all snapped into cold, sharp focus. The drive to the station was the longest 30 minutes of my life. I picked up my parents. My mom was clutching a rosary, her lips moving silently. My dad hadn't said a word since I told him. He just put on his coat, his face like granite. The station was small, rural. Detective Graves met us at the door. She was younger than I expected, with sharp eyes that held a kind of professional pity. I hated it. "Mr. and Mrs. Holt, Ryan, thank you for coming. Please sit." We sat in a small, windowless room. The coffee was burnt. Graves didn't waste time. She pulled out a tablet. "The fire, it did a lot of damage. But it also did this." She swiped the screen. The first photo was aerial. Just black. A black, scorched landscape, like the surface of the moon. Skeletal trees, like toothpicks. "This is about 200 yards east of mile 22, she said. the area where the dogs kept pulling according to the old reports. It was inaccessible before. Quadruple canopy forest, just a wall of brush. She swiped again. A fire crew was mapping hazards, trees about to fall, that kind of thing. They found this. The photo. It was the second panel of that image you saw. A concrete block, sunk into the earth. A heavy, grated metal door. It looked ancient, like a World War II bunker. It was stained black with soot, the graffiti on the doors warped and blistered. "It's a bunker," my dad whispered. It was the first time he'd spoken. "We think so," Graves said. "Maybe an old civilian defense thing, or a forgotten forestry cache. It's not on any map at all. The entrance was hidden, deliberately. The crew said there were remnants of a plywood and brush camouflage shed built over it. The fire burned it all away." My mom was crying now. What's inside?" Graves took a deep breath. This was it. The fire burned hot. The interior it's a mess. But it wasn't empty. We found evidence of habitation. And we found remains, Mrs. Holt. Human remains. The room spun. I grabbed my mom's hand. "There's more," Graves said, her voice gentle. "This is why I called you." She swiped again. The photos were from inside. Ash, metal, debris. The structure contained several, she paused, several welded metal enclosures, like large cages. "Cages," I repeated. The word felt like acid. "And among the debris, our team found these." She showed us a close-up photo, a small evidence bag held by a gloved hand. Inside, covered in soot, was a small red metal object. I stood up. I couldn't help it. "That's," I pointed, my finger shaking. "That's his. That's his. It's a bike tool. A multi-tool. I gave that to him for his 25th birthday. It has his initials, DH, scratched on the side." Graves just nodded. "We saw that." She showed us another. A mass of melted, bright yellow nylon, fused to a zipper, the color of his jersey. And the last one, the sole of a cycling shoe. The metal cleat, the part that clips into the pedal, was still attached, but the rest was just a charred, melted puddle of rubber and plastic. "Oh, God," my mom wailed. "Oh, my baby, my baby." My dad just closed his eyes. "We need a DNA sample, Ryan," Graves said softly. "For confirmation. It's a formality at this point, but we have to do it." I just nodded. I couldn't speak. I let a tech swab my cheek. It all felt like a dream, a 19-year-old nightmare finally coming to an end. Graves asked if I wanted to see the site. My parents, they couldn't. They just wanted to go home. I took them, got them settled, and then I drove back. I had to see. Graves drove me out in her SUV. We parked on the highway, right at mile 22. My spot. We put on hard hats and boots. The air still smelled like a wet campfire. We didn't walk in. We walked through. The ground was soft with ash. The trees were black skeletons. It was dead. Everything was dead. And it was so open. I couldn't believe it. The woods were gone. And there, plain as day, just a 2-minute walk from the road, was this thing, this concrete scar. We searched here," I stuttered, looking at Graves. I stood here. I yelled for him. He was right here? You couldn't have known, Ryan, she said. Look. She pointed to the ground near the entrance. That's the remnant of the steel frame. They built a whole false front. It probably just looked like an old, collapsed trapper's shed, or just a pile of brush. You'd have to literally fall on top of it to find it. I stood at the entrance. The metal grates were warped from the heat. I looked inside. It was dark. Awful. The smell of soot and something else. Something old. He was in there, I said. He was in there, and I was right here. Ryan, Graves said, putting a hand on my shoulder. Let's go back. We have to wait for the lab. The next 3 days were a new kind of hell. It wasn't the fog of not knowing. It was the suffocating certainty. We were just waiting for the official stamp. I called retired Detective Finch. He was in his late 70s now. When I told him, he was silent for a full minute. I heard him weep. My God, son, he finally said, his voice thick. The dogs were right. We failed him. I failed him. You couldn't have known, David, I said, repeating Graves's words. They felt hollow. On the 3rd day, Graves called. Ryan, the DNA is a 90.9% match. It's Daniel. I hung up. I went to my parents' house. I walked in. They were at the kitchen table, just waiting. I didn't have to say anything. They saw it on my face. My mother let out a sound. It wasn't a cry. It was an animal sound. A sound of final, total loss. The sound I had been dreading for 19 years. My father just put his head in his hands and his whole body shook. The fog was gone, and we were left in the ruins. But the investigation wasn't over. Graves called me back the next day. Ryan, there's more. The medical examiner's report is preliminary, but he wasn't alone. We found 2 sets of remains in the bunker. My blood went cold. 2? Yes. One is Daniel. The other is a male, Caucasian, much older. The bones are older. They were not from 2004. This second individual, he had a different cause of death. We found a bullet fragment in the skull. What? So, someone was murdered there? We think so, Graves said. And Ryan, we ran the ballistics on the fragment. It matches a cold case, a disappearance from 1998. I don't understand. There was a man, Graves said, and I could hear her flipping pages. A local person of interest in a few poaching cases, that's what they called it. But he was also a suspect in the disappearance of a hiker in '98. His name was Silas Croft. He was a recluse, a known survivalist. People thought he lived in the woods. He vanished right after the hiker did. Everyone assumed he'd just fled to Canada. So, Croft, I said, trying to piece it together. He was in the bunker, and someone shot him. We think so, but that's not the most difficult part. Daniel's remains. They were found inside one of the cages. The cage was padlocked from the outside. Silas Croft's remains. They were found outside the cage, about 3 feet away. A horrifying, impossible picture was forming in my mind. Graves, what are you saying? We're still building the theory, Ryan, but the ME found significant trauma to Croft's skull, blunt force. And Daniel's hands, the bones, they showed fractures, defensive wounds, or offensive. We think Daniel fought him. I sat down. My legs wouldn't hold me. We think Daniel found that bunker, Graves said, her voice quiet. Croft was there. He took Daniel captive. He locked him in that cage. And the bike? I choked out. The bike on the road? A red herring, she said. Croft must have put it back, to make it look like an abduction from the highway, to send the search parties in the wrong direction. So, what happened? I whispered. How did they both die? In there. We're not sure, she said. But the firearm we found, it was near Croft's body. It had been fired once. The rest of the bullets were in his pocket. The blunt force trauma, it was Canevere. We think, Ryan, we think Daniel killed him. He? What? From inside the cage. He must have pulled him close. Used something. A piece of metal, his own hands. He fought for his life, Ryan. And he won. I was sobbing. Just gut-wrenching sobs. My brother. My brave, stupid brother. But Graves, I said, the words catching in my throat. If he won, how did he? There was a long, terrible silence on the line. He was locked in, Ryan, she said, from the outside. He won the fight, but he couldn't get out. He won the fight, but he couldn't get out. That sentence. It will ring in my head until the day I die. The full picture, the truth, is so much worse than anything the psychics ever dreamed of. So much worse than the what-ifs that plagued my nights. Detective Graves and the ME laid it all out for us. It wasn't a quick anything. My brother, Daniel, 25 years old, crushing it on his bike, must have gotten a flat tire. Or maybe he just heard something. He was curious. That was his one flaw. He was always curious. He saw the hidden path. He pushed his bike into the woods. And he found Silas Croft's den. Croft, the man who'd been hiding there since 1998 after murdering a hiker and dumping his body. Somewhere. The bullet in his skull, Graves explained, was from a botched suicide attempt years ago. It hadn't killed him, just lodged there. Made him worse. More paranoid. He couldn't let Daniel go. He couldn't risk being found. He had a gun. He must have forced Dan into the bunker, locked him in one of those cages he'd built. Maybe for poaching animals. Maybe for... God, I can't even think about it. He took Dan's bike, rode it back to the highway, and left it. The perfect, simple misdirection. And then he went back. I don't know how long Dan was in there. A day? 2? But I know what happened next. Dan was a fighter. He was strong. He wasn't going to just... wait. The forensics. They said it was ugly. Croft must have gotten too close to the cage. To taunt him. I don't know. And Daniel, my brother, reached through the bars. He grabbed him. He used that little red multi-tool, the one I gave him, the one they found in the ashes. He fought, and he won. He killed the monster that trapped him. And then he was alone, in the dark, locked in a steel cage 200 yards from a highway he could probably hear. The ME was very kind. He said the cause of death was dehydration. He said it would have been a few days. He probably just went to sleep. I have to believe that. I have to. I can't let my mind think about him yelling. I can't let my mind think about him trying to get out. Me, on the other side of the trees, a few days later, calling his name. Was he still alive? When I was right there? That's the question that's the one. We had a funeral. 19 years late. We got a casket. We got his remains back. A small box of ashes and fragments. We buried him. We had a service. Hundreds of people came. People who had searched. Old friends. Detective Finch came in a wheelchair. My parents. They're broken. But it's a different kind of broken. My mom. She finally cleaned out his room. She packed up his trophies. She said, "He's home. He's finally home." My dad, he spoke at the funeral. He just read a poem. And he said, my son was a fighter. He never, ever gave up. The bunker was sealed. The county filled it with concrete. It's a tomb now, a scar. Last week I drove out to Highway 56. I pulled over at mile 22. It was the first time I'd been there since we knew. The woods are already coming back. Little green shoots pushing up through the black. They call it fireweed. It's the first thing to grow after a burn. I walked into the clearing. I stood on the spot. The concrete was fresh. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel peace. I just felt quiet. The fog was gone. The noise in my head, the 19-year-long static of, where is he? It was silent. I left the picture there, the one of him, the selfie, crushing it. I propped it against a burned tree, weighed it down with a rock. You're free, Dan, I said. It's over. I turned around, and for the first time in 19 years, I walked back to my car, and I didn't look back. Knowing what we know now, is it better to live with 19 years of false hope, or to finally know a truth that is this terrible? I ask myself that every day, and I still don't have the answer. If you believe that every family deserves answers, no matter how long it takes, subscribe, because there are more stories out there, just waiting for the smoke to clear.